Thank you, and thanks to the Compass team for including me. I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody's 3 ideas. So I have 3 ideas and maybe a 4th, time pending. First, I'm going to talk about a book that Jessica Lasky-Fink and I just published. It's called Writing for Busy Readers. The idea of it is, how do we write so busy people read, understand, and respond to what we write? Whether it's emails, text, reports, web pages, or Slacks, or any other kind of message. I would start with, have you ever spoken with someone and they said to you, didn't you read the thing? Right? The idea is they sent you something and you didn't read it. Have you ever experienced that? You can respond. Yeah. Okay, good. You're allowed, yes. Have you ever said that to somebody? You were talking to them and you had sent them all this information in advance, and then they obviously didn't read the thing, and you said, didn't you read the thing? You're allowed, you can respond. Raise your hand if you, yeah, okay, good. Only Dan Levy has ever experienced both of these. That's basically the problem we're trying to solve, which is, I'm a behavioral scientist. What do we know about how do we get people to read and respond to what we write? Started by a decade working on how do we get busy voters to read and respond to what we write. Spent another 10 years working on how do we get busy parents to read and respond to what we write. And then for the last 5 years, been working with state and local leaders on how do we get busy constituents to read and respond to what we write. Turns out there's only a handful of principles. We'll talk about 3 of them. This is all work with Jessica Lasky-Fink, who's research director of the People Lab. The first is design for navigation, because everyone skims. The TLDR version of this, the too long didn't read, for those who are not millennials, is that everyone is skimming everything we write with the goal of moving on as quickly as possible, even if they don't understand what we wrote. Like, that's the takeaway. And so how do we write in a way that accommodates the reality that everyone is busy skimming what we write? I'm going to illustrate it with a study here that I was not involved in, but that Ideas 42 did, that I really love. They're working with the New York City Police Department. This, to those of you unaware, is a court summons that the New York City Police Department gives to people. They give 400,000 roughly of these a year. Half of people do not show up to court. You would be forgiven by me, but not the courts, for realizing that this document, the point of it is to tell you you need to show up to a specific court at a specific date at a specific time. Half of people don't show up, which leads to bench warrants being issued, which leads to massive escalation of contact with the criminal justice system. Disproportionately hurts people of color in New York and low-income New Yorkers. So what they did was they rewrote it. What if we, despite this being a really important consequential exchange where an officer hands this to you and you receive it, presumably people read it because it's important, and the officer says you need to show up to court. What if we wrote it as if we wanted people to understand what it said? Right? So they rewrote it, working with the police department and the court system, making it easy for a busy person to skim. Again, very high stakes, busy person. First thing they do is they rename it. Instead of a complaint/information, they call it a criminal court appearance ticket. Then they, at the very top of it, say the date and the place where you're supposed to meet. Okay? So courts, judges, lawyers, police officers, almost all of them think that if someone doesn't show up to court, it is an intentional act of evading the criminal system, right? They all think it should have no consequence. They run this experiment with 350,000 New Yorkers receiving court summons, find that it reduces bench warrants being issued by pretty substantially. 25,000 fewer bench warrants are issued just during the time of the study. It's now this court summons is now the standard in New York City and being implemented around the country. The idea is writing so busy people can pull out the key information. I ran an experiment with Jessica with the Journalist Resource, where it's a Harvard-based organization with 50,000 journalist members. Their goal is to help make research easy to summarize, easy to use in journalism. Okay? 50,000 journalists. They write a weekly newsletter making their research summaries available. This is what one of them might look like. We proposed, what if you just add headings to make it skimmable? The idea is adding headings might make it easier for someone to jump around and figure out where the key content is before they give up on you, which is the default behavior is quitting. When anyone's reading anything you write, the default behavior is giving up on it. We run an experiment where 25,000 get version A, 25,000 get version B, and we compare usage of anything below the headlines or the headings, right? Comparing usage by journalists in their news reporting. The outcome here is clicking. And we double the usage by journalists by adding headings. The idea here is making it writing as if we want to make it easy for a skimmer to pull the key information away. Designed for navigation because everyone is skimming. The second one, which is my favorite, less is more. I'll talk about a couple of kinds of less, but here's an experiment that Jessica and I ran. We, with a grad student, scraped 7,000 email addresses of elected school board members in the US. And then I sent them an email saying, I'm a professor, you're doing important work, thank you, thank you, thank you, you're very busy, thank you, I know people don't appreciate you enough, thank you, will you please fill out my survey? In the other condition, I just deleted all the middle words. Said, I'm a professor, will you please fill out my survey, thank you. We had 200 people read both and predict which one would be more effective. Almost everybody thinks the original longer one because it's more respectful and deferential. We run an experiment where half get the original, half get the concise version, more than doubles response rates. Oh, something popped up, here we go. More than doubles response rates on filling out the surveys by cutting it in half, despite almost everybody thinking the longer one would be more effective. Similarly, I worked with the Democratic Governors Association, emailing 750,000 donors. They wrote this fundraising email with crazy formatting, but is what it is. They write this email, and I propose, why don't you arbitrarily delete every other paragraph so it doesn't make sense anymore? So we arbitrarily delete every other paragraph. We have people read both, and they agree it's incoherent, the one on the right. Run an experiment, 375,000 on the left, 375,000 on the right. Increase donations by 16%. Less is more, because everyone is skimming, everyone is trying to move on. So there are two kinds we talked about of less is more now, which is fewer words. That's cheap and easy, because you're not cutting ideas. Fewer ideas. The more ideas you add, the more likely someone is to give up and move on. So it's a trade-off. There's not a right answer for how much to include, but you just have to know that there's a trade-off. The more you add, the less likely someone is to read it all. And then the third is fewer requests. Across a bunch of experiments, we see that when you add additional requests, you decrease people's likelihood of responding to any one of them. So there isn't a right answer. It's just trade-offs all the way down. People are less likely to read when there's more. So you may decide that it's worth it. Completely communicating to a smaller number may be better than incompletely communicating to more. But it's just a trade-off. That's the second. Less is more. Designed for easy navigation, less is more. Fewer words, fewer ideas, fewer requests. And the third that we'll talk about is just make reading easy. We have an experiment with the Washington Post where we test 21,000 field experiments testing headlines that they write for news stories. So they write a news story and then they write multiple headlines. And so what we do is we look at, across 21,000 of these A/B tests, what are the attributes of headlines that make people more likely to click on them? Washington Post. These are people who are capable of high levels of reading. And here's an example. An experiment in decarceration because of the pandemic is working, make it permanent. That's one version. The other version they tested was misdemeanor court has been closed for a year, keep it that way. Much lower reading level, simpler words, more common words, less grammatical complexity. What we find across 21,000 experiments with Washington Post, and then another 14,000 with a news source called Upworthy, that people are more likely to click and read simpler language. Few common words, shorter words, simpler grammatical structure. The idea is everyone is skimming, so the easier you make it, the more likely they are to read and respond. This is true of high-level reading, whether Washington Post, or more common writing like Upworthy. There's two versions of this. The median US adult reads at a 9th grade reading level. The 50th percentile of US adults reads at a 9th grade reading level, which is what we teach 14-year-olds. That means 50% read at a lower reading level. When we write in complicated or complex ways, we're writing inaccessibly to the majority of people, and those who can read it are deterred by it and more likely to move on. Here's a real sign in a real park in North American city. I'll read it for you. Persons shall remove all excrement from pets. A real sign. There's two possible reactions to this. The first is you walk by and I have no idea what those words mean, so I move on. Okay, inaccessible. The other is, I know what those words mean, but I'm going to move on because it's kind of painful to read. Right? So there's no version where this level of complexity is effective. This won an award from the Center for Plain Writing. The award is called the WTF Award, which stands for words that failed. And so Jessica and I would have rewritten it something like this: scoop your pet's poop. Fewer words, much simpler. Notice also that we made it skimmable, right? We use formatting to reinforce the key point, which is scoop your pet's poop. The rest of it is smaller. Notice the law number. No one needs to know the law number. I bet the person who wrote it wouldn't know the number. So the idea is that's not the most important information, as opposed to this one. You want to sort of draw attention to the key information and write simply. So those are the three. Design for easy navigation because everyone is skimming. Less is more. Fewer words, fewer ideas, fewer requests. And make reading easy. There are three other principles which you have to read the book to pull out. But the big gist of all this work is we should add a round of editing to everything we write, whatever it is, where we ask ourselves, how do I make it easier for the reader? Because when we make it easier for the reader, it's more effective at achieving our goals. It's kinder to the reader because it doesn't waste their time. And it's more inclusive. It's more accessible to more people. So with that, there's on the website, easy checklist, a one-pager that's simply written for you to use for the 6 principles. The website is writingforbusyreaders.com. There's also an AI tool that we made where we trained a large language model on these principles and then tuned it for email. And so I'm going to show you just how it works. So here we wrote an email saying, like, we should do our meetings better. This is, you just paste it. It's free. Thousands of people use it every day. You can use it too. Prior to the meeting, do this. During the meeting, do that. After the meeting, do that. And so, look, now, you know, LLM, these large language models, you can't predict. This is crazy formatting, but you get the spirit of it. It does it differently every time. But what it does, it cuts the words here in half from 346 to 175. And it also adds a structure where you can skim and it pulls the key information out. The idea is it's a live coach, a 24/7 coach to learn how to write in this way, specifically with email. TLDR is we should make it easier for readers because it's more effective, kinder, and more accessible. Thanks.